Hi guys, Rasmus here. So I have gotten a lot of questions on how to record and how to set up with the Two Notes Captor, which I have here. So this video is gonna be a walkthrough of all the steps you need to do. So it's gonna be fairly basic and focusing on beginner stuff. So if you already know all this, then this might not be the video for you. But if you're new to this, then check all this out, and it should explain you from like setting up to plugging in cables to getting a sound on the computer. So we're also going to go through the Two Notes wall of sound plugin later on the computer, and I'll show you how to get a usable sound afterwards. So to record with the Captor, we will need a bunch of things. First off, we'll need a guitar. I'll be using my Jackson 7-string here. Then we will need an instrument cable, like this one, 3 meters. Yeah, fine. An amp. Here I'm using my EVH 5150 Launchbox head. This is a small head, but it sounds pretty great. And then from that, we'll go with a speaker cable, like this, that can handle a proper load. So we use that, and then we will go into the Captor, which you will obviously need. And lastly, we will need an XLR cable to run into our audio interface. So first off, we take our guitar, we'll find the output, and then we'll plug our jack cable into that. We then take the other end of our instrument cable and we put it into the input of the amp. So next we turn around Captor. We find the speaker output located here, and we take our speaker cable and we plug that in. And then I have a 16 ohm Captor, so I ensure that the impedance is set to 16 ohm here. It can also be 8 or 4, depending on what cabinet you usually use. So just make sure to set it whatever your Captor is set at. We then take our Captor and we find here on the back the input, which is marked with this red jack, and it says speaker in. So we take the speaker cable and we plug it into the input, right? On the other end of the Captor, we have the XLR. So we'll take our XLR and you'll find a male part that fits into that, and then you'll insert that. So this is our setup so far. Guitar going into the amplifier. From the amplifier, we are going from the speaker out and we're going into the Torpedo Captor. And then from the Torpedo Captor, we're going out of the XLR. I've set the output here. You can see it's not set that loud. It's set to what? 1, 2, 3, 4. So not that loud. The speaker simulation here should be in the middle position, which is off. There's also phase button, which we'll kind of ignore for now. If you have a lot of hum, then you can try this ground lift. I don't personally use it, you might. Then last we get to our audio interface, which is located here. And then we will take the XLR and put it into our audio interface. Now the Captor needs power, which it can either get from like a 9-volt pedal power supply, or we can just activate the phantom power on our interface. Most interfaces should have this function, and it will say 48 volts, and that is what you need. So now the Captor is powered through this cable, so now we're ready to record. All right, so here we are in Studio One with my 2 recorded guitar tracks. So you can see I have guitar 1, guitar 2 here. These 2 tracks, this is the output from the Captor. And I have some programmed kicks, and then I have a bass, which actually has a dual input, but it sounds fine. Yeah, so if we start with the recorded guitars, just one at a time. So as you can hear, it sounds pretty horrible. And the reason for that is that we don't have an impulse response loaded onto this track yet. So we'll fire up an impulse response, which is done in this Two Notes Captor wall of sound plugin. And you get this with the capture, and you get some cabinets with it. So the way this works is that you have your kind of cabinet simulation, your microphone selection here, then you have various parameters. Then down here you have 2 channels. So you're basically combining 2 impulse responses. So this is just how it loads up stock. So it has some British vintage 30 with a dynamic 57 microphone, which is just a Shure SM57. And let's just hear how it sounds now. So that's just with the stock settings. If I try and turn it off, you can hear what the difference it makes. Right, so as you can hear, it makes quite a drastic difference. Now, again, this is just the stock settings, and I think we can improve on those. So let's start by turning off one of these and then just working with this one. So now the volume is a bit quieter because we only have one. So let's start by selecting another cabinet. So again, you have a couple of included cabinet. So let's try the Bow Green, which is a Bogner greenback, I think. And then it defaults to some microphone. So we'll just take the dynamic 57 again classic. The same microphone, different cabinet, but it sounds fairly different. Now, so we have 2 controls here, which is the distance and the sender. So distance is how far away from the cabinet the microphone is. And as you pull it away, you can hear that you get more of the room sound, and the sound is not kind of as direct and as aggressive. And then we have the sender here, which is how much on axis, or kind of how much in the center of the cone the microphone is. So we're moving the microphone around here, right? So this changes such way. So as you can hear, the sound gets darker as I move the microphone away from the cabinet or from the center of the speaker. You can also see it here up here on the visualization. And then you can, of course, choose the front and back. Then you have this very phi. And this is if you have several active at once, then you can vary the phase between them. We're not gonna mess with that, we're just gonna leave that as 0. Then we have overload, which is kind of if you're overloading the microphone a bit, it adds a bit more distortion. I usually keep this at 0 or maybe 5%, depending. Yeah, I don't think it does that much good stuff. So let's just keep it at 0. But what we will do is we will move this the sender position. So I think at 0 it's a little too harsh and a little too bright. So we'll move that back a bit. Let's just hear it again. So it's still a bright sounding mic, which is what we're going for here, because we're going to use two microphones on the cabinet. So one of them to be pretty bright, which I think we have now. And then let's go to the other one here, activate it and turn off the first one. Notice that the selection box here must be on this so that we can work with this. Now let's also change this to the Bogner. And let's choose a different microphone. So there's a couple of choices here. You can see you have some bass mics, some dynamic mics, you have a ribbon microphone, and you have some condenser microphones. I will choose the ribbon 121, which is a Royer 121. And let's just hear how that sounds. Just to let you compare. So you can hear that this is a lot darker, and it has also a more kind of pronounced mid-range that sounds a little nicer than it does on the 57. But still, we want this mic to be even a bit darker, so let's try and move the sender out and find a good spot. so now I have those two. Let's try and hear them combined. Obviously it's gonna be louder, but the overall sound is also going to be different. I'm just turning down the overall output here just because I could see that we were close to clipping, so let's just put it like -3. Alright, so that was one channel. So now let's take that guitar and pan it left. So you could pan it left 100%. I chose to just pan it left 80%. I think that's plenty. Now let's go to the other channel here. Again, this is the other guitar. So I recorded two separate guitars. So two separate takes, but with the same amp and setup and so forth. Again, sounds horrible, so let's turn on this. Right, so again, starting with one, let's find a cabinet that we want to use. Let's only see the ones that we actually own. And yeah, so there's an angle, which I think I might have purchased on my own. I'm not sure if that's going to be included. So we'll skip that. Then, yeah, so you have the stock one here, and let's say the brownie bag, which I think is an EVH. So also just start with the 57. Yep. And I like to kind of be fairly quick with this and not spend a ton of time on it, because you can quite quickly kind of get ear fatigue and have no idea what you're doing in the end. Now let's try and go for a bit different sound. So maybe the dynamic 7B or the 421. Let's try the 7B. Sounds a bit different. Again, it has more mid-range and it's not that bright. So let's try and combine those two. Yeah, I think that works nice. So now let's pan it to the right, 80%. And now let's hear these two combined. Right, I think that works pretty well. Now here on the guitar bars, I will sometimes add a little EQ. So you can see here I have a high-pass filter. So a high-pass filter is just basically rolling off the low end. So typically somewhere between maybe 70 and maybe up to 150, depending on what genre you're doing. But about like 90 or 100 typically works nicely. Let's just hear it. Oh, only the guitars, probably. Yeah, I think that works nicely. Then you can see I have a, first off, I have a dip here around 3.7 kilohertz. So this is to take out kind of some harsh frequencies. I'll try and boost this so you can hear what it sounds like. So yeah, as you can hear, not very pleasant sounding. So just removing a bit of that. You can either do it like with a Q on an EQ of like 20 and then really go narrow and cut. I like to have somewhat a wider Q. Also, this EQ doesn't really go any higher than this. And then, you know, don't cut too much. If you cut too much, then it also sounds weird. Kind of sounds like you've thrown a blanket over your cabinet or something. So I want that to be a bit of high end, but not too much. But I think minus 1.5 dB should be fine. And lastly, I have this this boost at around 1.8K. Also, just to compensate for now that we make it a bit darker, let's try and make it a bit brighter. So let's also hear what that sounds like. Doesn't do a whole lot, but it just makes the guitar cut through a little bit more when we are doing the full mix. Right, so let's hear it with everything. Alright, so that was a quick walkthrough of the guitar sound that I just got here. Again, you could probably take this a lot further if you spend more time on it, but this is just a quick rundown of how you could get some decent sounds in a very short amount of time. So I hope you enjoyed that. Right, so that was my video on the Captor. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Please leave comments below with any questions or anything else, any other setup that you want me to show with it. This was very simple. I might do an explanation later of how to also use a DI box while you're using the Captor, and maybe also how to reamp with the Captor. So tell me if you'd like to see that. Yeah, but maybe consider subscribing and leaving a like, and bye for now.